Hey all, and welcome back to Fuzzy Dirty Gaming and a new series on the channel. Now this series has one eye on league start because we're now just over a month away from the new league, and I'm focusing on leveling up a Blink Arrow of Bombardment build on a fresh SSF account. So apologies for those expecting the next episode of Zero to Hero. I decided to abandon that series and restart in SSF for two reasons. One, it gives me more understanding of the build itself, how the skill works, how to level the build, and how it feels handling the early Atlas progression. I also didn't want to invest heavily into it because that would involve things like the specters that are realistically only available in this league, some charms, and lots of added power that is unlikely to exist next league. So what I want to do is just totally ignore all of the new ascendancies and see how it feels at its base. There is bound to be some sort of power creep in the next league that adds power to builds. So hopefully this is like a baseline of what the build can do. And if anything, it's going to perform better next league. Now, the first episode is going to be going through the leveling in detail and then how to transition to Blink or Mirror Arrow at the end of the campaign and early maps. So let's first start with why this build. It's a build I've tinkered with in trade and really only come across this league. It has been around for a while, but with the introduction of the bombardment skills, it makes it a lot easier to get into this type of build very early on. In terms of the playstyle, it plays a bit like a totem build because you're essentially putting clones down and then they do the damage and you move around avoiding any damage from enemies, putting your curses on and things like that. Mobility is pretty decent since you're going to blink arrow around for the majority of the time that you're moving, and the base damage and clear of this skill is pretty nuts early on very basic gear. Regard to the leveling, I need to give a massive shout out to Havoc as he recently did a Guardian SRS Levelling guide, and I've used a lot of this details to get the early progression nice and smooth, and there's lots of tech that has been incorporated for a while but definitely helps the leveling feel much quicker. The leveling starts with a fire setup, so it's Rolling Magma, Flame Wall and Holy Flame Totem. Now, I've never been a fan of Rolling Magma, but with Elemental Proliferation, it does clear really, really well. You do have to aim and it can be a bit clunky, but I think for the first 28 levels, there isn't a better skill that you can use. When you hit level 28, you do a very brief swap to Armageddon Brand because it's just a bit quicker and easier to clear. And then you switch to SRS around level 40 to 41. And it's whenever you've got enough points on the tree to make it feel good, and you can pick up Unleash. It's indicated in the POE when you should swap. And it's then smooth sailing from there. Around Act 7 is where I deviate completely from the SRS leveling and I start picking up all the nodes I need to switch to Blink Arrow, but I don't make the switch until early maps. In SSF, you're going to need to farm the gem yourself. The quickest way to do it is just repeat the first lab over and over again once you've completed the campaign, because you'll breeze through this really quickly and you just have to keep using the font at the end until you get either Blink Arrow or Mirror Arrow of Bombardment. I think Blink Arrow is the better gem because it also combines as your movement gem, but either or works really well. And then you're also going to use the other gem, but the normal version of that, just to add more DPS. So for my setup early on, because I got Blink Arrow, I have Blink Arrow of Bombardment in one setup, and then just standard Mirror Arrow in another. The last thing the leveling does, which if you're not like a Razor or you don't try and rush through the campaign you might not be aware of, is it incorporates a tech where even though we're a spellcaster, we're going to dual wield melee weapons with high attack speed. We're going to use an axe in one hand and a sword in the other. They're just going to be white bases, and we're going to craft fire damage to spells when you get to level 24. What this gives you is enough damage to do the whole campaign, gives you decent attack speed so that you can then leap slam through the campaign zones instead of having to walk and use the odd flame dash. Now, I didn't switch to this tech until Act 8 because I wanted to see how much slower it felt if I just dual wielded wands and then just used flame dash to get through the campaign zones, and it was a lot slower. I would think it added well over an hour to my playthrough, so if I redid it, I would just swap to this tech straight away. Now, you do have more potential to do more damage with wands because you might get a wand with more damage on it than your crafted weapons. But when you take into account the dual wield mastery that gives you more damage if you've got two different weapon types, that more than makes up for some extra damage you might get on your wands. And I'd say once you get those weapons sorted out, your playthrough feels very, very smooth, very quick, and you've got enough damage all the way through. You're going to need to supplement your damage with an aura like Anger until you get to your second Labrynth, but overall, very, very smooth playthrough and very enjoyable. So what we'll do is just go through the campaign acts 1 to 10, and I'll just go through in brief detail what you need to do and when you need to switch if you wanted to try this sort of playthrough. Before I talk through the leveling, there is a detailed POB linked in the description with all the relevant skill trees and notes for your leveling. So I'm not going to go over trees in this video, just refer to the POB. There's no items or skills in this POB yet, as this is something that I'm working on and will hopefully form part of a League Star guide. There's also a POB for my gear and skill links when I switch to Barmer, but we'll go over this more at the end of the video. If League starting, I'd recommend starting as a Ranger, as momentum support comes in handy to link to your Leap Slam. It also gives you more flasks and currency, which is quite helpful early on. When you're leveling, be on the lookout for the following weapons to keep for later when we're going to craft spell damage and start using Leap Slam. For your axe, you want either a rusted axe or a boarded axe, and then for your sword, you want either a rusted sword or a saber. These are the highest attack speed bases. You want one sword and one axe. Your gem setup for Act 1 is going to be Rolling Magma linked with Ellie Prolif. Then when you reach level 8 and get to Prison, you can add Combustion, which is a free reward. You want to have a Holy Flame Totem for extra damage. That comes from your Tidal Island quest reward. You want to buy a Flame Wall at level 4. You get a Clarity after killing Brutus. Buy your Leap Slam also at this point once you get the currency and just level in an offhand. You'll get Frost Blink for your movement skill. You can replace with Flame Dash later on if you prefer. And link an Arcane Surge to this if you can. It will give you more spell damage and more mana regen. You want to get this gem as soon as you can because you don't want it to level up with the vendor. So once you've done your Tidal Island quest, buy this and keep the gem at level 1. For weapons, just look out for any ones with any kind of spell damage on them that's going to help your damage. In Act 2, you're going to get offered Herald rewards after getting the Baleful gem. Take Herald of Thunder and use this gem. We don't need the reward from Weaver yet, but we will later on, but you can just leave it now to level up with the vendor and we can come back for it later. In terms of bandits, you're just killing all for the 2 skill points. In Act 3, buy Anger when you hit level 25 and swap this for Herald of Thunder. You also want to buy a Flammability Curse and use this on bosses and tanky rares. When you get to Solaris Temple level 2 and you get an Infernal Talc, make sure to visit the Eternal Laboratory, which is located through a door next to Diala. This is where you get the fire damage craft that we're going to use on our Leap Slam weapons. When you've got 8 transmutes and you hit level 24, you want to craft fire damage spells on both of these weapons. Then you can start using Leap Slam linked to momentum support. If you feel mana is an issue, you can take the Life Mastery that makes skills use 30% of life instead of mana, but I didn't feel that this was needed yet. If you do end up getting a 4-link in this zone that's 4 blues, you can add Controlled Destruction to your main 3-link skill, but in all honesty, a 3-link is absolutely fine. The 4-link you want to look for your SRS swap is blue, 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 red, or blue, blue, red, red. You're going to be unlikely to have the points to make this swap until level 40 plus. You want to kill Gravicius and take Armageddon Brand as your reward and then replace Rolling Magma with the brand. At this point, you want to go back to Act 2 and buy Wave of Conviction. This is going to be a big part of our damage until we switch to SRS. When you feel ready to do Lab, complete it and take Radiant Crusade. This minion gives us a ton of DPS and makes the rest of the campaign a breeze. When you do unlock the Sentinel, I recommend buying a Convocation gem from the Act 3 vendor and put this on your move button. This will just pull the very slow Sentinel back to you regularly. At this point, I'll drop Flame Wall because I just find it too many buttons and it adds socket pressure. Your links should now be Armageddon Brand, Combustion, Elemental Prolif, and if you have a 4-link, Controlled Destruction. You want Leap Slam linked to momentum support, Flammability, Anger and Clarity are going to be your auras. You want a Wave of Conviction for your single target damage, and then a Holy Flame Totem just for some consecrated ground and some additional damage. You can now move through the campaign zones really quickly using Armageddon Brand and Leap Slam. On bosses, put your brand and totem down, curse, and then spam Wave of Conviction. Moving on to Act 4, this is Act you're going to get access to Unleash support, which you get as a reward for unlocking the Belly of the Beast. As long as you have this and a nose to increase minion duration, it's time to swap to our final skill of the campaign, and that's Summon Raging Spirits. You're also going to get a pick of Golem gems. I go with Stone Golem for life regen, but Carrion Golem is also an option if you want more DPS. You can buy your SRS gem leveled from the Act 1 vendor. Your links either need to be 3 blue and 1 red, or 2 blue and 2 red. Your 2 blue gems are SRS and Unleash support. If you've got 2 red sockets, it's going to be Elemental Damage with Attacks, which you can buy from the Act 2 vendor, and Melee Splash, which you can buy from the Act 1 vendor. If you have 3 blue, 1 red, your combo would be Minion Damage and Melee Splash. If you want more single target on bosses, you can swap out Melee Splash for Multi-Strike, which can be bought from the Act 4 vendor. At this stage, you can also drop the totem if you need the sockets, as it offers us very little at this stage. This is a point I also add in a Desecrate from the Act 2 vendor to spawn corpses, and Flesh Offering from the Act 1 vendor. This just gives more attack speed to your Summon Raging Spirits. So your gems from now until Act 6 are Summon Raging Spirits Unleash, linked to minion damage or ele damage with attacks, and then Melee Splash. You're still running your Anger and Clarity, got your Leap Slam with Momentum Support, Convocation, Flammability, Desecrate, Flesh Offering, and then your Golem. Going into Act 5, there's not really anything to do here. When you get offered your flask reward, take a granite flask. You don't need to use it yet, but we are going to put them into play before the end of the acts. The only other thing you need to do is make sure you're in a good place resistance-wise, ready for the penalty for the resistances. Once you get into Act 6, you've now got access to all of the gems. So at this stage, I go back to Act 2 and I buy 2 Fresh Meat support gems and level them in my offhands. If you can, also pick up an Added Cold and Grace and level them in your offhand. You'll have to get them from Lily in Act 6. The 2 gems that I add into the actual build at this stage, I drop Momentum Support and I put faster attacks in. I also buy a Feeding Frenzy gem and I link that to my Golem. Your links from here until the Blink Arrow swap are Summon Raging Spirits, Unleash, Minion Damage or ele damage, and then Melee Splash. You got your Anger and your Clarity. You have a Leap Slam linked to faster attacks, Convocation, Flammability, Desecrate, your Flesh Offering, and then a Stone Golem linked to Feeding Frenzy. In Act 7, you're going to get another Flask reward. Take a Jade Flask for this, so you now can boost your armor and your evasion. The only other change to skills is when you complete the second lab and take Unwavering Crusade, that gives you Anger, Wrath, and Hatred. So you can drop Anger and you can swap in Determination. For the third Labyrinth, you're going to take Bastion of Hope. In Act 10, you're going to get another Flask reward. I normally take a Silver Flask just for a bit of extra speed, but this slot is really optional. You can take whatever flask you want to in there. There's no more changes to the setup. You would just go through the campaign as is. There are lots of mini respecs along the way, so be careful and pay attention to the skill trees. You might need to complete the Book of Regret quests in Act 1 and 2 to be able to respec all of the points necessary. When you're happy that you do not need any more specific SRS spellcaster gear, you can swap your filter to a filter on my profile called Bow Early Mapping 322. You can follow that in the link in the video description. This allows you to start collecting gear to craft for your swap to Blink Arrow. Ideally, what you're looking for is an ivory bow and a broadhead arrow quiver. When you can, you're going to want to spec out of the dual wheel nodes once you've switched to Blink Arrow, but you'll likely need Orbs of Regret for this because you should have used all of your free respec points. In terms of swapping, I just want a bow that I'm going to craft with the Screaming Essence of Hatred, Wrath, or Anger. Then if that has an open prefix, I'm going to craft more flat damage. If it has an open suffix, I'm either crafting crit or attack speed. For my quiver, I just want something with some flat damage and damage with bows. At this point, you're fine to swap to Blink Arrow because the gem itself has a ton of damage. So your links are going to be something like Blink Arrow of Bombardment, Fresh Meat Support, Minion Damage, and ele damage with attacks. That's if you had 3 blue, 1 red. If you had all blue gems, you wouldn't run ele damage with attacks, you'd run Conk Effect. If you had 2 red sockets, you'd run ele damage and Volatility. You're then going to have your Determination and Clarity. You're going to swap your Flesh Offering to a Spirit Offering to get more crit. You're still going to run your Desecrate and your Convocation, and you're going to swap your Flammability for Sniper's Mark. You're also going to want to run Mirror Arrow because you can get another 4-link setup to do some damage on bosses. The 2 must-haves are Mirror Arrow and Fresh Meat. Then it can be any 2 from ele damage, Added Cold, Conk Effect, Minion Damage, and again, Volatility support. This will easily see you through into yellow maps. I don't recommend going onto a 6-link until you've completed Uber Lab. Take in Radiant Faith for the extra energy shield and have Eldritch Battery because you're not going to be able to sustain mana just from your mana pool. That's kind of as far as I've got at the moment. So the next episode is going to cover leveling and gearing up in maps, including the Atlas tree I decided to start with. I'm also going to go through the auras because we're going to be able to add a lot more auras in because we're going to be able to fill up all of our mana because of Eldritch Battery. And that's where I've got to at the minute. I'm very happy. I've maybe completed 6 to 7 white maps. I've switched to my Blink Arrow setup and it feels really, really smooth. So my job from here is just to keep on leveling, grind, get some gear, and just see how it performs progressing all the way through to red maps. So next episode, looking forward to it, is going to cover the majority of progressing my Atlas. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. Take care and see you in the next one.